So we're interviewing Bridget Fox, Liberal Democrat candidate. Bridget, how long have you lived in Islington South?
I've lived in the borough of Islington for nearly 20 years and in Islington South for most of that time, and for nearly a decade in Hemmingford Road on the edge of King's Cross.
And as you know, in King's Cross we have a strong focus on very local issues. In broadest possible terms, what will electing you for Islington South mean for people in King's Cross?
Well, it means you'll have a good local MP who's lived in the area for a long time, knows the area and has had the privilege of serving some of the residents of the area already. For 8 years I was a local councillor in Barnsbury, and I also sat on the King's Cross Regeneration Board as a council representative. I've been a governor of St Andrew's Primary School, which serves part of the northern King's Cross area for over a decade. So I feel I've got a contribution to make.
King's Cross is characterised by extreme density of its housing and its built environment. What do you and your party do to change the way the planning system and areas like King's Cross are designed?
I think there's two things. First, you've got to make sure you've got the buildings themselves are designed in a way which it makes best use of modern building and design techniques to make them green buildings and feel as spacious and light as possible. And you can do innovative things now to create outside space at upper levels and so on. But you also need to get the balance between the types of development right. There's no point doing ever more dense housing development if you don't balance that with more public open space and amenities both in the state sector, schools, hospitals and so on, and also in the private sector in terms of having thriving local shops. So it's about having a mixed developments for our very mixed community.
King's Cross has some major pieces of national infrastructure in it, some of which seem to have a national significance that go beyond local needs. There's particular concern in the community about the building of a large medical research laboratory just outside Islington South, but only 100 yards away in St Pancras, rather than using the land for sustainable housing. Is that something you have a view on?
I have views on medical research and separately from this, but I think, specialist facilities, there's always been specialist facilities in central London, and that can have good effects in terms of providing a range of interesting and sustainable jobs. But obviously it can, if they're very large, physically large facilities, they can be seen as taking land from more locally useful services. And I think, again, with a huge development site like King's Cross Central, the biggest development site in Western Europe, you're going to have some national type facilities there, but it's about getting the balance right. And I'm pleased that certainly on the Islington side we've managed to deliver so far in the earlier Regent's Quarter development a very sustainable mix of workplaces, accommodation for travellers, as well as facilities for local people. And I'd like to see more of that mix at King's Cross Central. But of course most of it's in Camden, so a lot of it's out of the hands of Islington people, which is why you need to make sure that the people Islington elects both locally and nationally are strong advocates for our area.
Even here where we're doing this interview, we can hear traffic in the background, which kind of dominates this very densely trafficked and populated borough. King's Cross has got some particularly huge traffic problems. We're seeing the Mayor's bike scheme come in sometime this summer. How would you promote a better mix of road use in King's Cross?
Well, in my time on the council, I did champion sustainable transport. Islington's first sustainable transport strategy came out under my aegis, and I've worked to promote better facilities for cyclists and particularly for pedestrians. They're my passion. Everyone's a pedestrian at some point in their journey, and if you can make the street environment safer and more attractive for people on foot, I think it benefits all travellers and all transport users. Nationally, as you may know, Lib Dems are proposing a huge expansion of investment in sustainable transport as part of our Green Jobs programme to fight unemployment and climate change at once. And I think areas like King's Cross are in the front line to benefit from that kind of investment.
One of the corollaries of an incredibly dense neighbourhood are very, very close proximity of extremely rich people, extremely poor people, extremely safe areas, and areas that appear to have high levels of crime. King's Cross has suffered a range of horrible murders over the last 18 months, 2 years. If you were elected, what would you do to help improve the situation on crime and antisocial behaviour in King's Cross?
Well, every one of these tragic murders is unique and has slightly different circumstances, and it's important not to generalise from them. But I lived in King's Cross for many years, and I felt the area was getting safer in my time there. And certainly my experience of walking home from King's Cross Station late at night improved drastically over the years, particularly when we had more bobbies on the beat. And that's a key priority for my party locally and nationally. We have got more police locally, and that's partly because my Lib Dem colleagues on the council put more money in to ring-fence more police for our local area. But we now need to increase that and make sure that we've got police working in a range of ways. I think the initiative to have police officers paired with each school is a really good one, to keep kids safe, but also to troubleshoot trouble from some kids early, so that it doesn't spill out and escalate into the kind of violence we've seen in a few but very tragic cases.
And it's not just about policing. What about tackling the underlying causes of crime?
Well, there are huge inequalities. You mentioned the great disparity between rich and poor. It's a fact that under the last 13 years of the Labour government, the gap between rich and poor has grown wider, not narrower. I think is disgraceful. And in London, half all children are growing up in poverty. It's more than half in Islington. And so we need to have programmes which work not just with individuals and individual families, which is sometimes mooted as the solution, but community solutions which engage people and bring neighbours together. I have to say there's been some great initiatives in King's Cross where people have got together to clean up their estates or traffic calm their streets, and that has brought together very diverse neighbours, and I'd like to see more of that approach, an enabling approach from government. There are housing estates in Islington and in the King's Cross area which are really attractive, safe, well-run places, and they typically are the ones where most of the management and the local budgets have been devolved to the tenants and residents there. And I'd like to see more of that community housing approach where people have more control over their environment, they respect it more, they feel safer, and it's a way to build a better neighbourhood for everybody.
And people in King's Cross suffer with the legacy of poorly designed social housing from 30 or 40 years ago that's been badly maintained over the years, and there remains a shortage of affordable housing in King's Cross. How would your party tackle that if you were elected?
Well, we've seen some major improvements on some major estates in other parts of the borough. The Market Estate and the Packington Estate are currently being demolished and rebuilt with much more appropriate housing, and in both cases been a high level of tenant involvement in the design, which I think is right. And we've seen the same happen in the King's Cross area with the old Nash Court going and being replaced by much better homes. So even in our confined and overcrowded borough, there are imaginative things you can do to improve the quality of social housing. Improving the quantity is also important. And again, it's about getting the mix right in new developments. But I'm very proud of some of the initiatives that have been taken in other corners of Islington where just up the road on Roman Way, for example, garages have been replaced by some of the best new council housing in the country, and I'd like to see more of that. We're never going to build on green space, but there's a lot of brown space land that could be used more effectively for better housing for local people.
And one final question. If the people of King's Cross and Islington South were to elect you, what do you think would be the biggest single change we'd see in King's Cross?
Well, I think the big difference you're going to get with a Liberal Democrat MP is that I will be independent of the government of the day. I think, although I'm very excited about the way the opinion polls are going, I don't think an outright overall Lib Dem majority government is about to happen. I might be proved wrong. So I think Liberal Democrats will be in a position of influence at best, and that means I can be a strong independent voice for our area. There have been a lot of bits of legislation going through under previous governments which have done good things for Islington, but I think there have been more that have done bad things, particularly for areas like King's Cross, which have often lost out. And it's important you have an MP who's free to speak up and, if necessary, take on the government of the day on behalf of our area, whether it's about post office closures, whether it's about the design of King's Cross Station, whether it's about the benefits system, whether it's about fairer taxes or more money for our schools, all of which are Lib Dem policies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.